The sun has barely touched the horizon when it begins. Across the open savanna, a sound rises that stops every living thing in its tracks. Not the roar of a lion, not the thunder of hooves, something older, something rawer. A chorus of whooping calls, rising and falling, cutting through the pre-dawn air like a blade through tall grass. It is the sound of hunger, and it is the sound of something that refuses to lose. If you have ever watched nature and found yourself secretly pulling for the underdog, if you have ever wanted to see something small and outnumbered pull off the impossible, then you need to stay with this. Because what you are about to hear is not a story about the strongest animal winning. It is a story about intelligence, coordination, nerve, and a kind of social ferocity that most people never credit to a creature they consider little more than a scavenger. This is the story of how a clan of spotted hyenas walked up to 12 lions sitting on a fresh kill and walked away with it. And if you want more stories like this one, stories that reveal what is really happening out there on the open plains where the cameras rarely stay long enough to catch the truth, then make sure you subscribe, because there is always more beneath the surface than most people ever get to see. Now, let us go back to where it starts. The Masai Mara in southwestern Kenya sits at the edge of the Great Rift Valley, and it is one of the most biologically dense places on the planet. During the dry season, when the grass has been stripped back to yellow straw and the water holes shrink to muddy craters, the pressure on every predator in this ecosystem becomes almost unbearable. Animals that would normally avoid each other are forced into the same corridors, the same drinking spots, the same hunting grounds. Competition tightens like a fist, and in that kind of environment, the rules that usually govern who eats and who goes hungry can be broken, not by accident, by design. The pride in question is well known to the researchers who monitor this region. 12 individuals in total, 4 adult females, 3 subadult males not yet fully grown into the heaviness of mature lions, 2 younger females barely out of cubhood but already hunting with the group, and 3 adult males, one of whom is a dominant animal of considerable size and presence, his mane thick and dark, his body bearing the scars of years spent defending territory. This is a pride at the height of its power. 12 animals together represent an almost invincible social unit. Lions are already the apex land predators of the African savanna by individual measure. 12 of them together are something else entirely, something that almost nothing in the animal kingdom will challenge head-on. Almost nothing. The kill itself comes late in the afternoon. The light is long and amber, the kind of light that makes the savanna look gentler than it is. 2 of the adult lionesses have separated from the main group and moved downslope toward a drainage ditch lined with acacia scrub. The grass here is still slightly taller, still holding a remnant of moisture near the root line, and in that tall grass, a wildebeest has been grazing alone. Wildebeest are not solitary animals by nature. They move in vast herds, and their safety comes almost entirely from numbers. A lone wildebeest is a wildebeest that has made some kind of error, separated by injury, by confusion, by bad luck. And bad luck on the Mara does not stay private for long. The 2 lionesses work together with the kind of coordinated patience that comes from years of hunting as a unit. One moves wide to the left, using the acacia scrub as cover, circling in a long arc that will take her upwind. The other stays low, closing the distance with an almost painful slowness. The wildebeest senses something. Its head comes up, its nostrils flare. It takes 3 stiff-legged steps to the right. And then the lioness on the left erupts from the scrub, and the wildebeest runs directly into what it was trying to escape. The kill is fast, a practiced combination of weight, leverage, and suffocation that lionesses have refined over hundreds of thousands of years of doing exactly this. The wildebeest goes down in under a minute. The calls go out immediately, not planned, not spoken in any language a human ear can isolate, but communicated nonetheless through posture, sound, and scent. Within 15 minutes, the rest of the pride has arrived. The 3 adult males reach the carcass first, displacing the 2 hunting females with barely any ceremony. This is the social order of lions. The males eat first, regardless of who made the kill. The females and subadults wait at the margins, pacing, occasionally darting in to steal a mouthful, before being driven back by a swat or a growl. The younger animals watch from a safe distance, learning the dynamics that will govern their entire lives. By the time the light drops toward dusk, the pride is spread across a roughly circular area centered on the carcass. The dominant male is still feeding, his face buried deep in the body cavity, his shoulder blades rising and falling with each tearing motion. 2 of the other males have eaten enough to lie down nearby, already beginning to slip into the heavy, food-drunk stupor that follows a successful hunt. The females are getting their turn now, jostling around the remaining accessible parts of the carcass, their own cubs still waiting at the outer edge. The scene is one of complete, bloody abundance. A pride in its full social expression, gathered around a kill large enough to provide for all of them. And from somewhere out in the darkening grass, something is watching. The spotted hyena, Crocuta crocuta, is one of the most misunderstood animals in Africa. Its reputation rests on a foundation of misconception, on a long cultural history of portraying it as a coward, a skulker, a creature that lives off the kills of others. Filmmakers historically positioned it as the villain, in contrast to the noble lion. Children's stories made it a laughing menace. Even its own voice, that rising, whooping cackle, was interpreted as something unhinged, something desperate and inferior. The reality is almost exactly the opposite. Spotted hyenas are among the most sophisticated social mammals on the planet. Their clans operate under a strict matriarchal hierarchy, with females dominant over males, which is itself a rarity among large carnivores. The social structure of a hyena clan has been compared by researchers to that of primates in its complexity. Individual animals recognize each other, remember social debts, form coalitions, strategize about when to defer and when to push. They are not scavengers by nature. Studies conducted over decades in the Serengeti and the Mara have consistently shown that spotted hyenas kill the majority of what they eat themselves. What looks like scavenging is often simply the opportunistic reclaiming of food from lions who stole it from hyenas in the first place. The dynamic runs both ways, and the hyenas know it. This particular clan numbers roughly 30 individuals in total, ranging across a territory that overlaps with the pride's regular hunting ground. But the animals that are relevant tonight are fewer. Scouts effectively, though that is a human concept applied loosely to what is actually a sophisticated form of information-sharing behavior. 2 females have been tracking the pride since the hunt began, not following them exactly, running parallel, staying just far enough out that the lions would not react with a chase, just watching, monitoring, waiting for information that would tell them whether what was happening was worth escalating. When the kill came down, both animals stopped, read the scene, and began calling. The calls of the spotted hyena carry extraordinary distances across open ground. The whooping vocalization that seems chaotic to human ears is actually a finely structured signal carrying information about the caller's identity, location, and social status. When a hyena calls in a specific pattern, other clan members can determine not just where the call is coming from, but who is calling and under what kind of stress or excitement the call is being produced. The 2 scouts were broadcasting a very specific kind of information. There is food. It is large. Come here. Over the next 40 minutes, as the pride settled into its feeding ritual, hyenas began arriving. They did not arrive in a rush. That is the first thing to understand about what happened next, the thing that separates this event from a simple mob scene. They arrived strategically, in ones and twos initially, converging on a loose gathering point roughly 200 meters from the carcass, staying below a slight ridge in the terrain that shielded them from the direct sightlines of the resting males. This staging behavior is something that has been documented by researchers but is still not fully understood. It suggests a level of collective awareness that is difficult to explain without acknowledging genuine social coordination. The hyenas were not simply running toward food. They were assembling. By the time full darkness had settled over the Mara, with only the low blue light of a quarter moon cutting across the grass, there were 22 hyenas gathered in that depression behind the ridge. The numbers mattered. But numbers alone have never been enough to take a kill from 12 lions, and any hyena alive in this ecosystem has learned that lesson either personally or from the behavior of its clan members. Numbers are the foundation, but the approach is the architecture. The dominant female of this clan is a large, heavily scarred animal. She has held her position for several years, and her authority within the clan is absolute. The lower-ranking females and the males defer to her, not just in feeding order, but in movement decisions, in territorial responses, in exactly this kind of escalating confrontation with rivals. And in the darkness, she was the one setting the pace. She moved first toward the carcass, alone, in a low-angled trot, not rushing, not circling, moving in a direct line that would take her to within about 50 meters of the nearest lioness. The purpose of this initial probe was not to steal food. It was to take a reading of the pride's current state. How fed are they? How alert? Which individuals are in what positions? How close are the dominant males to the carcass? How far are the subadults scattered? Every piece of this information changes the calculus of what is possible. The nearest lioness raised her head when the hyena came within range of her perception. A low growl moved through the pride like a current. The dominant male lifted his face from the carcass and tracked the approaching animal with a flat, heavy gaze. The hyena stopped, held her position, did not retreat, but did not advance. She sat at the boundary of what the male would tolerate without launching a charge, and she stayed there, calling. The call she produced at that moment is different from the long-distance recruitment call. It is sharper, faster, higher in the ascending register. It communicates urgency and location with pinpoint specificity. Come now. Come to this exact place. Come now. They came. The rest of the clan came up over and around that ridge in a wave that would have been genuinely alarming to watch in the low moonlight. 21 animals, moving fast, converging on the dominant female's position from multiple angles. And critically, they did not all converge from the same direction. This is the part that researchers found most striking when they reviewed the behavioral data afterward. The clan split. Roughly a third of the animals came in from the northwest, following the path the dominant female had taken. Another cluster came in from almost directly east, from the direction of the drainage ditch where the kill had been made, and a third group swung wide to the south, approaching the scene from behind the resting males. This three-pronged approach created an encirclement that was not complete, but suggested one. And for 12 lions who were largely fed, several of whom were already drowsy with the metabolic weight of a large meal, this visual geometry had an effect. Lions are not easily intimidated. That needs to be stated plainly. The popular image of hyenas driving lions off, kills in great numbers, the lions slinking away in humiliation, is a real phenomenon, but not a simple one. Lions of full physical capacity and high alertness will not yield to hyenas regardless of numbers, in most cases. The mathematics change when lions are fed, when the meal is largely consumed, when the energy cost of defending what remains exceeds the caloric benefit of doing so, and the mathematics change fastest when the lions are facing threats from multiple directions simultaneously. The dominant male responded to the approaching wave of hyenas with exactly what you would expect from a dominant male lion of his size and status. He charged. A charging male lion is one of the most physically imposing spectacles in nature. He covers ground with a speed and weight that seems disproportionate to his bulk, his mane expanding as he accelerates, his roar at close range not just a sound but a physical event, a compression of air that you feel in your chest. The hyenas in his direct path scattered instantly, not in panic exactly, in practiced evasion. The animals at the front pulled back and split wide, drawing the male after them, pulling him away from the carcass, and as he chased, the hyenas behind him closed back in. This is a maneuver that appears repeatedly in documented hyena-lion confrontations, and it works precisely because of the lion's psychology. The dominant male's instinct when threatened is to neutralize the perceived lead threat, the animal closest or boldest. But in a group this coordinated, there is no single lead threat. As soon as he commits to chasing one animal, others fill the vacuum his departure creates. The male ran roughly 40 meters, stopped, and turned back. In the time it had taken him to do that, hyenas had reached the carcass. The two other males came up hard now, driving into the mass of hyenas at the kill site. For a period of several minutes, the scene at the carcass was one of extraordinary chaos, lions and hyenas in physical contact, the hyenas screaming and snapping, the lions roaring and striking out with paws that can kill with a single blow. Several hyenas were hit and rolled. One was badly swiped across the shoulder and pulled away from the group, limping. These injuries are real, and they matter. Hyenas are not impervious to lions. A direct strike from a large male can fracture bones, tear muscle, cause internal damage. Animals have died in these confrontations. The cost-benefit calculation that the clan was running was not abstract. It was written in the literal physical risk that every individual was accepting. But the cost-benefit calculation for the lions was running simultaneously. The kill had been feeding 12 animals for over an hour. The carcass, while substantial, was significantly depleted. The gut cavity had been opened and largely emptied. The hindquarters were partially consumed. What remained was real and calorie-dense, but it was less than half of what had been there when the pride arrived. The 3 adult males, who had eaten first and longest, were the most satiated, and satiation shifts the threshold at which the energy cost of defense exceeds the value of what is being defended. One of the secondary males made the first disengagement. He pulled back from the scrum at the carcass, turned, and walked roughly 30 meters away before sitting down. Not fleeing, not driven back, choosing, on some level of biological calculation, to let it go. The dominant male was still fully engaged, circling the carcass, roaring, striking out at hyenas, who came within range. But each time he moved to drive a group back on one side, others pressed in on the other. He was one animal, and even his size and ferocity had limits in every direction at once. The females of the pride had pulled back with their cubs. This is always a prioritized behavior. Hyenas have been documented killing lion cubs, and the protective instinct that pulls lionesses away from the main confrontation to guard their young is real and powerful. Every female who moved to shield her cubs was a body removed from the defensive formation around the carcass. The third adult male moved next, following the second in a withdrawal that was neither hurried nor panicked. He settled 30 meters out, watching. The dominant male held his ground alone for another 4 minutes. This is not a small thing. It represents an extraordinary individual commitment, a single animal standing between a coordinated group of 20-plus opponents and what is effectively already a partially lost cause. He charged twice more, both times pulling hyenas back, both times seeing others fill the space. And then, without any single dramatic moment of capitulation, he turned and walked to where the other males had settled, and he sat down. The hyenas took the carcass. What followed is interesting for reasons beyond the simple fact of the theft. The clan's feeding hierarchy was immediately visible and sharply enforced. The dominant female fed first, and the other animals arranged themselves around her in a rough rank order. Lower-ranking individuals who tried to claim a position above their station were driven back with lunges and aggressive vocalizations. The males fed last and at the edges, exactly as they would on the clan's own kills. The social structure that had organized the takeover was the same structure that now organized the distribution of the reward. The lions, for their part, did not simply abandon the scene. The dominant male in particular remained close, and twice in the following 30 minutes he charged back in, scattering hyenas briefly, reclaiming a mouthful, and then being overwhelmed again by sheer numbers. These are not the actions of an animal that has accepted defeat. They are the actions of an animal recalibrating, adjusting, trying to find the angle that his instinct and experience tell him should exist. Eventually, the mathematics became too stark even for him. The hyenas had the carcass, they had the numbers, and the cost of continued intervention was only accumulating. He withdrew and did not return. By the time the first gray light appeared at the eastern horizon, the hyenas had processed the carcass almost completely. Spotted hyenas have digestive systems of remarkable capability. Their stomach acid is concentrated enough to dissolve bone, and they routinely consume parts of prey that other predators leave behind. The hooves, the teeth, the denser sections of bone. Almost nothing is wasted. By morning, what the pride had left of their wildebeest was reduced further still, the remaining pieces scattered and gnawed, the grass around the site soaked dark. The pride lay in the shade of a scattered stand of croton trees 150 meters away. The dominant male was already asleep, his sides rising and falling slowly, his scars pale against his tawny coat in the early light. There was no visible distress in the group. Lions do not process humiliation the way a narrative demands that they should. They are pragmatic in the way that all successful predators must be. They had eaten. They had been outmaneuvered by a more numerous opponent. Tomorrow the geometry would likely be different. The savanna does not give permanent victories to anyone. The hyenas moved off as the light grew stronger, moving back across the territory toward their den site, some of the younger animals still mouthing small fragments they had carried with them. The dominant female moved at the center of the group, her pace unhurried, her expression, if one can apply the word to a hyena's face, the expression of an animal that has done exactly what it came to do. Now, there are several things about this event that reward closer examination, because the bare account of what happened, while dramatic enough, understates the sophistication of what the hyenas actually did. The first thing worth understanding is the role of information in this story. The two scouts who tracked the pride and called the clan were not acting on instinct alone in any simple sense of the word. They had specific knowledge of the pride's composition and current state, knowledge built up through repeated observation over time. Hyena clans that share territory with lion prides develop detailed behavioral knowledge of those prides. They know which individuals are dominant, they know roughly how many animals are present, they know the difference between a pride that is just killed and is deeply invested in defending the carcass, and a pride that has been feeding for an hour and is drifting toward metabolic withdrawal. The scouts read the scene and made a judgment that the odds were favorable. That judgment was the first act of the takeover, and it happened long before any hyena came near the carcass. The second thing worth understanding is the split approach. When the clan divided into 3 groups coming from different vectors, they were not following a rehearsed plan in any way that maps neatly onto human tactical thinking. But they were exhibiting something that functions like tactical awareness at the group level. Individual hyenas are alert to the positions of their clanmates during confrontations. They adjust their own movements based on where others are and where threats are located. The emergent result of many individuals each making locally rational decisions about approach angle and timing can produce group behavior that looks coordinated, because, in a functional sense, it is coordinated, not by command, by collective intelligence. The third thing worth understanding is the charge and return cycle that drew the dominant male away from the carcass. This pattern has been documented in enough separate hyena-lion confrontations to suggest it is not accidental. The hyenas closest to the charging male retreat fast enough to avoid serious contact, but do not retreat far enough to break the dominant male's attention entirely. They keep him engaged and moving away from the carcass, while others behind him take the opening. Whether any individual hyena is consciously implementing this strategy in a way that involves intentional deception is a question that behavioral researchers approach with appropriate caution. What is clear is that the pattern produces a specific effect, and that hyenas repeat it reliably. The fourth thing, and in some ways the most important, is what this event tells us about the relationship between spotted hyenas and lions across the savanna ecosystem as a whole. Lions and hyenas have been competitors for at least as long as both species have existed in their current form. The relationship between them is not a simple predator hierarchy with a clear top and bottom. It is a dynamic, contested, and mutually shaping competition that has influenced the evolution of both species. Lions are larger and individually more powerful than hyenas. But hyenas live in larger and more cohesive social groups. They have more robust digestive systems. They are capable of running prey down over long distances in ways that ambush-specialized lions cannot easily match. Each species has evolved specific capabilities in partial response to competition with the other. In areas of high lion density, hyenas have been observed modifying their hunting behavior to reduce the chance of attracting lion attention to a fresh kill. They feed faster, they call less during the kill itself, they move carcasses when possible. These are behavioral adaptations to a competitive pressure that has been running for thousands of generations. And lions, in turn, have developed behaviors that reflect their own awareness of hyena competition. The speed with which a feeding pride responds to the sound of hyena calls, even from a long distance, is not random. It is calibrated experience. What happened in the Mara on that night was not an anomaly. Exactly. It was the visible expression of a competition that plays out in various forms across the African savanna every single night, in dozens of locations simultaneously, most of it unseen and undocumented. The outcome on this particular night went to the hyenas. On other nights, in other configurations of numbers and hunger and alertness and terrain, it goes to the lions. There is no fixed result. There is only the continuous negotiation between two extraordinarily capable social predators, sharing a resource base that neither fully controls. But this particular outcome stands out for a specific reason. 12 lions is a large pride, not the largest ever documented, but well above average. A pride of 12 represents a collective defensive force that, under most circumstances, would simply be too much for even a large hyena clan to overcome. The fact that this clan succeeded is not just a story about hyena bravery or tenacity. It is a story about the specific conditions that made the mathematics shift, and about the clan's ability to read those conditions and time their intervention to the window when they were most favorable. They waited until the lions had been feeding long enough to reduce both the value of what remained and the urgency with which the dominant animals would defend it. They came in numbers large enough to divide the defensive response of the pride across multiple fronts. They drew the most dangerous individual, the dominant male, away from the carcass through the charge and return cycle. They accepted individual injury as part of the group's cost of doing business. And they moved with a speed and coordination, once the opening appeared, that gave the lions no single clear opportunity for a decisive counteraction. This is not a strategy in the human sense of a planned sequence of steps decided in advance. It is something that emerges from the combination of individual intelligence, social cohesion, accumulated experience, and the specific informational environment that the clan had access to on that night. But the outcome it produced was strategic, and the outcome was one that most observers, who had simply looked at the numbers, 12 lions against 22 hyenas, would have called impossible. That is the thing about the spotted hyena that keeps rewarding attention the longer you look at it. Every layer of closer examination reveals another level of capability that the surface story obscures. The cackle and the crouch and the reputation for cowardice are a kind of camouflage, not intentional, but effective. The animals underneath that reputation are something considerably more interesting. Consider how the clan managed their injured member during the confrontation itself. The female who took the blow from a lion's paw and pulled away limping was, within minutes of withdrawing, attended by several clan members who investigated the injury through close contact, nosing at the wound, maintaining physical proximity. This kind of social care behavior around injured individuals has been documented in spotted hyenas and represents a level of social responsiveness that many people would not associate with an animal of hyena's reputation. The injured female fed that morning from the carcass the clan had taken. She was given access consistent with her rank, and the animals ranked below her did not challenge her reduced mobility. The social contract that governed the confrontation governed the aftermath as well. Or consider the cubs back at the den, a group of animals the clan had implicitly left behind in order to mount this confrontation. Den guarding behavior in spotted hyenas involves specific individuals, usually lower-ranking females and some males, who remain with cubs while the rest of the clan engages in a major food acquisition event. The composition of the group that came to the Mara kill site was not the full clan. It was the portion of the clan whose social position and physical capacity made them the appropriate participants in exactly this kind of high-risk, high-reward confrontation. The selection of who goes and who stays is not random. It reflects an allocation of social roles that has developed over the lifetime of the group. There is also something worth saying about the wildebeest itself, the original prey animal whose misfortunes set this entire chain of events in motion. The wildebeest migration that brings hundreds of thousands of animals through the Mara ecosystem each year is the resource base that makes the density of predators in this region possible. Without the migration, neither the pride nor the clan could maintain their current size and composition. The competition between lions and hyenas in this ecosystem is, in part, a competition for access to the enormous flush of resources that the migration represents. The lone wildebeest that the lionesses ambushed was a small part of that flush, but it was also a trigger point in a competitive dynamic that had been building pressure for weeks. Both the pride and the clan were operating in a resource environment where each large kill is a significant event, where the distribution of calories between competing social groups is never settled and never entirely predictable. The lions will make another kill. They are lions. The ecosystem owes them nothing, but it provides them with the conditions they need to be effective, and they are extraordinarily effective. The pride recovered from the loss of the wildebeest carcass without lasting consequence. By the following afternoon, they had moved to a different section of their territory and were already in the early stages of another ambush setup. The dominant male showed no behavioral changes consistent with stress or disruption. He ate the next morning and slept through the heat of the day and was himself, fully and entirely, as the light shifted toward evening. The hyenas returned to their den before the sun fully cleared the horizon. The dominant female settled among her cubs, who had been waiting, and allowed them to nurse, and was herself, fully and entirely, the matriarch of a thriving clan in the middle of one of the richest ecosystems on Earth. Both of these things can be true simultaneously. Both of these animals can be extraordinary. The outcome of one night's confrontation does not establish a hierarchy that overrides everything else we know about either species. What it does is add one more data point to a picture that keeps getting more complex and more interesting the longer researchers and observers are willing to stay in the field and keep watching. There are places in the Mara where you can sit on the roof of a vehicle in the early morning and hear both sounds at once. The deep, rhythmic roar of a lion marking its territory somewhere in the middle distance, and the rising, cascading whoop of a hyena calling across the same darkness from a different direction. Both sounds carry information that the animal making them has spent millions of years refining. Both sounds announce the presence of something capable, something social, something that has learned to operate in one of the most demanding competitive environments that the natural world produces. To hear them together is to understand, on some level that does not require scientific language to access, that this is a contest that neither side wins permanently, that the savanna does not offer permanence to anyone, and that the animals best equipped to survive in it are not necessarily the strongest or the fastest, but the ones most capable of reading the moment, assembling the resources, and choosing exactly the right window to act. The hyena clan read that window correctly on that particular night in the Mara. They assembled what they needed. They moved at exactly the right moment. They absorbed the costs the confrontation required of them, and they walked away from 12 lions with a kill those lions had made, and they fed, and they went home. In the long and unresolved competition between these two animals, across thousands of years of African savanna and tens of thousands of interactions that no human eye has ever witnessed, that is one night's accounting. And it is enough to make anyone who has ever underestimated the hyena reconsider the entire ledger. The savanna keeps no score, but the animals do, in their way. Every clan member that made it back to the den that morning carried something beyond protein. They carried the behavioral memory of what had worked, the social reinforcement of a successful collective action, the immediate feedback that their coordination and their nerve had produced an outcome they needed. Whatever the biological substrate of that experience, it feeds forward. It shapes future behavior. It is,